course.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we are live. Hi, everybody. Good morning. We'll give it a minute or so because we have quite some people joining today. Make yourself comfortable. Definitely go and grab a coffee or a tea if you don't have one. And we'll be waiting for the audience to join. I see, see Christian is dialing in for Elimity HQ with plenty of sun. So while we're waiting, feel free to drop in the chat where you are calling from. It's always great to see how far the identity and access management topic is reaching. And feel free to also say something about the weather, because for once in Belgium, it's super sunny and we like to brag about it. I see people from Oslo, from Stavanger, and of course, the beautiful Brussels already. And maybe first things first, while we're waiting for some people, we can do a bit of housekeeping today. We have quite a big crowd. So since it's the end of the quarter, it's quite busy, but also quite some people are on holidays. So people requested the recording of the webinar. So all people that registered will receive automatically later today the recording of the webinar. Also, we're happy to share the slides upon request. And we have quite some difficult cities of the Nordics that are joining. We have Kvinnherad, Lindensnes, and Lunar. Pardon my Norwegian language. Okay. So like we mentioned, everybody will be getting the recording later today, but also super important, if you have questions, it's not simple with the platform to shoot them out loud, but you can drop them in the chat and they will be handled at the end of the presentation. So there will be a webinar, will be taking 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And at the end, we have plenty of time to cover all the questions for both Elimity and Team Identum. Okay. So today I'm very happy and lucky to be joined by Alf Auken from Team Identum today, but also on the other side of the screen, you have Christian Bartels of the Belgian Team Elimity, and they will be walking us through some topics. Quickly sharing the agenda for today. So here you go. So first of all, it will be Christian who will be sharing what the NIS2 directive is, because we have quite some European companies joining the webinar today. But also not only what the NIS directive means and for what sectors this is impacted, but also what the impact is on your identity and access management processes. Then afterwards, Alf will show how organizations can automate their identity and access management processes. So we're thinking about provisioning, the deprovisioning of your accounts. And then afterwards, Elimity will share some best practices and tips how you can see who can access what within the organization. So how you can have a mature identity governance to achieve NIS2 compliance. As mentioned, the webinar will take around 40-45 minutes. And at the end of the presentation, we will be covering all your questions that you have shared in the chat. So first things first, Christian, can you share some ideas around the NIS2 directive?
100%. Hill, thanks for the introduction. Quite nice to see that you took over my job of moderation, which I usually do. So it's exciting to be on the other side, actually. So also a really warm welcome from my side. Nice to see we have plenty of people dialing in, and I see the counter is only going up. So that's great to see. Before we jump into the topic of NIS2, I will just, as the audience, I also see it's not our usual crowd. It's a bit different, a bit more up north. I don't know where that's coming from, but Alf will maybe shine some light on that later on. Anyway, so maybe a short introduction about Elimity as an organization. So we are a Belgian company, actually a spin-off of the biggest university of the country, the KU Leuven, fully European by heart and by nature, and not only by our organization itself, as well as by the investors that are backing us. Then, of course, the solution itself, and we're gonna have plenty of time discussing that, is really designed around the regulations, the compliance we have out here in Europe, and we experienced some vast growth the last couple of months and years. So nowadays we're managing over 1 million accounts all around Central Europe as well as so abroad. With that being said, let's switch and let's deep dive into NIS2. So I did actually some research this morning to kind of refresh my mind, but I first want to frame a bit what we're going to look at. NIS2 is a broad directive. We all know that to kind of increase our cybersecurity within all organizations for certain critical and non or less critical organizations. We're going to take a look at that, what organizations need to comply with NIS2, but it's a broad directive on general cybersecurity stuff, right? And our friends from Identum and us, we are really experts in the part of identity and access management. So that will be the focus of the webinar today. You see here, there's a broad list of certain things, but there is certainly a decent part of identity and access management, as you see here. So what does it require? And they even call it basic cyber hygiene practices, where identity and access management is one subpart of that. And then when we zoom in and dig deeper into what does it actually mean and what the things is you need to comply with, also as Belgium, and it's especially for the international crowd, we've been really proud that we've been the first country that kind of translated the NIS2 directive in local law. Hence, we had a little head start, let's say. And what we see, especially here, is that there are a lot of things that companies already do anyway on the level of cybersecurity. Talking basic stuff like having some basic awareness or having an antivirus, those are kind of things that were already there. However, identity and access management always has been and always is the most complex part, or one of the most complex things to cover with identity and access management. And also the goal of the webinar today will be to show you the way how to get compliant with the identity and access management part of the NIS2 directive in a really easy and efficient way, without breaking the bank and without breaking the user's fingers, making their life harder, and without having a huge project. So that's where we will zoom in today. So let's take a bit as a look at the sectors, and then you can make the check for yourself, for everyone who is here today, if you are if you have to comply actually with the NIS2 directive, right? And there was, prior to NIS2, of course it's 2, there was a 1, and you see everything that's not marked that was already, so that's the what we call critical infrastructure stuff that already has to be compliant. Now this got way bigger, and I think quite some stuff that has actually added there. And I think one of the newest ones is, for instance, the public sector, right? Public sector was not didn't have to be compliant with the NIS1. Now it's part of it. So the NIS2 directive is also extremely important for everyone who is working in public administration, or the organizations that do work in public administration. And with that, we will go once further. So and that's a really important one. So, and that's also why this collaboration of Identum and Elimity is so exciting, is when we look at the directive, when we look at what needs to be done in the part of identity and access management, it's quite of a broad scope, but if you break it down, it comes kind of to two different and two major parts of the identity and access management. One's where Identum are experts in, and one's we are experts in. What Identum does is the operational control, and I will hand over to Alf in a second because he's the expert and walk you through all of those kind of things. So it's about doing the right things, and then what we are experts in, and we are helping organizations with being able to prove that you're in control, because doing certain things is nice, but you also have to prove the control to identify identity risks, cleaning them up, having the control about user access, and especially then having a clean governance process around it, so that you have an end-to-end security part from an identity point of view. And with no further say, Alf, I will hand it over to you, and you will tell us all about the operational part and also how that not only makes it compliant and more secure, but also I think there is also a great user experience waiting for us over there.
Thank you, Christian, for that introduction. Yeah, as Christian's mentioned, it's the NIS2 directive is pretty broad. We need to focus on a few parts of it, and we're going to look at the operational part of it, which is what we do as a company. And what you see mentioned a lot in the directive is the goal or the scope of the NIS2 directive is to increase the overall cybersecurity in the union. So Norwegian, we're not part of it, but as you said, we are by association still in the EU, and we're European at heart as well. But what it really comes down to is taking control over your identities. And there are several ways towards doing that, but an automated identity lifecycle management is usually the kind of overarching theme of what we do. What does that mean? Well, it's explicitly mentioned several times, the joiner, mover, leaver. More about that later, but of course, access management represents a challenge and also a potential security risk. If you don't know who can access what in your organization, if you don't have a policy in place that says something about who could access what, and you don't have control over your employees when they leave the company, you do have a security issue. So part of what we're going to see here is how do we automate the lifecycle of your employees. Another important topic is how you delegate access control. I mean, access control goes through the NIS2 directive as a red thread. And sometimes you can't really do that centralized. You need someone out in the organization to delegate accesses. And how do you do that without compromising your security? Data quality is also perhaps the foundation and the most important part of everything when it comes to access on identity and access management. And data quality is at best difficult, but in most organizations, the best place for your data is your HR system. That's where the data about your employees are maintained. It's where they begin their journey. And it should be used, in our opinion, as the master data for everything that follows. And every organization, small or large, at some point needs to onboard collaborators or external consultants. And that's also a bit of a headache sometimes. How do you grant the right accesses to people that are in your organization doing some kind of work without compromising your security? Yes, Identum in a nutshell. We're Norwegian and beautiful Bergen in the background. We are been around for a while, since 2009, and we offer a cloud-based. We've always been cloud-based EAM solutions for the small and medium businesses and the municipal market here in Norway and Sweden. Like Elimity, we've passed 1 million accounts that we currently manage, and of course, we are very proud about that. Our approach to IAM is lean and local. There are a lot of systems out there. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but what you do need and want is a system that really can give you the basic functionality and beyond at a fair price and fairly quickly to set up. That's the lean and local slogan for you. So what are the challenges? Well, faced with NIS2 directive, we are in a world where cybersecurity is, of course, very important. And in earlier days, it was easier. We came to the office, we could be behind firewalls and whatnot. Physical barriers or physical digital barriers, they are no longer present. I mean, in this modern day and age, it's all about the digital identities and how we kind of manage them in a hybrid work environment that quite a few, if not all of us, are in. In this world, then, the NIS2 directive comes and says, okay, but great, digital identities are cool and all, but we need to practice least privilege. What does it mean? And how can we access a granular access control? Again, back to the automated lifecycle management, this is where it all comes in. But I mean, the concept of least privilege is ever more important. And it means that you can access, you need a system that can enable you to have your employees access only what they need and nothing more. So expect more push on that. It's no longer only what your employees can access in your organization, it's also about why they can access it. Is this access tied to your role? Do you need the access to the patient journal system? That is also a big part of the NIS2, and I think Elimity will talk more about how you can monitor that later. So we see a lot. In Norway, we've come away. We see in Europe other segments that hasn't come that far in the identity and access management work in their organizations, and there are a lot of manual processes still going on. As we know, there can be inefficient and error-prone. There are the human elements that the NIS2 directive is not very aware of, but also want to address through automation. So when it comes to lifecycle management, how can you do it? Of course, you can do the manual work, the spreadsheet method, as we call it. It's still widely in use. Excel is the master system for a lot of things that you wouldn't believe, but of course, it's easy to set up. The risks are apparent or obvious. It's manual labor, and you have no kind of real control over it. The semi-manual is either an export from your HR system to, for instance, Active Directory or other things, but it's only going one way. So when you feed your systems with the users, but when they move, change lines of work, change position, or lead the organization, you have no control. And often, you know, people that's been around a while in an organization, you can see how long they've been there by the amount of accesses they have. That is a clear risk and something that needs to be addressed. The in-house coded solution is, for instance, based on either, it could be Excel, it could be Microsoft Identity Manager, which is nearing end of life, where some key personnel has coded a solution that works for you. Custom built, it's hard to maintain, and if the key personnel leaves your organization, you are at risk. And then there are, of course, the big guns. There are a few, quite a few big IAM providers and the IGA providers that all have that in common, that they're expensive solutions. They are really tailored for quite big organizations, and they require expertise to run that. So what we've done is create a platform that is easy to use, no code, and it's deployed and taken into production quite quickly in an organization. And it's call it lightweight if you win. I prefer lean. It's only what you need, nothing more. But we can fulfill quite a few of the automation tasks that's connected to the lifecycle of your users. We have a few integrations because doing good work with the master data you have requires good integrations towards target systems. And there is always a risk of falling out there if you don't have the good start point. So, to summarize, part of the way towards NIS2 compliance is having a system, a centralized system where you can delegate and enforce rules that grants accesses to what your employees need. And you can go towards least privilege access thinking and more of a, we've all heard of role-based access models, but roles are very big. You can have healthcare employee, but maybe the role-based access control system or thinking is a little bit challenged by the NIS2, where it's more of the attribute-based access control system, meaning we need to be a more granular approach to the accesses you grant your employees. And yeah, this is where we fit in the middle. We've taken the time to develop our own free guide. You can download it and read it at your leisure. It's found on our webpage. You can see the link there. And of course, are there any questions after this webinar? We'll answer them. So yeah, basically that's it. Christian, you have heard me speak. How can you build on top of the access work that we do?
Yes, indeed. I'll thank you for the nice explanation. Always also for me a pleasure to learn something about that automation part. Now let's come to the more governance, more audit, more analytics part, right? So we took a look at how to operational do things. Now we're going to take the deep dive, and that's the second crucial part for compliance, is to really have provable control about who can access what. And that's something we do for organizations all over the world. One of the most famous ones you see down there, one of our biggest clients, for instance, is the well-known Dutch Rabobank, the biggest bank of the Netherlands, but also well represented as well in the private as well in the public sector. So why is it so important? Well, what does it actually mean? And especially when we go back to what we earlier saw on the NIS2 directive, is to understand basically who has access to what. And that's essential for NIS2 directive. And when we look at the NIS2, if we break it down, what does it actually mean? And then we break it down. What does it mean to be in control of user and access? That means that you are provable in control to know whether or not you have orphaned accounts. So people that do not longer work for your organization, but there are still accounts open, or they still could access some accounts. So accounts are either not blocked or not deleted. Also to be able to understand and to show who has access to private sensitive data. That's not only important for NIS2, might be even a GDPR relevant thing, which is of course a different story and different directive, but you see they're all quite closely related towards each other when it comes to the topic of identity and access management. Then what we always see, I call them personally the hidden super users, people that have extensive privileges. With all organizations we work with, we see they are great employers. People enjoy working there. People work there for 5, 10, 20, 25 years. And they usually don't start one job and do the whole job for the whole career, but they will make career, right? They start as a trainee or as an intern, and then they grow, they maybe switch departments. And every time someone does that, we are really good at people giving them access to let them work, but we're usually really bad and is to clean that up and revoke access that's not longer needed. And of course, then we have all those kind of things where we usually want to apply a 4I principle, segregation of duty, to be sure that people can not approve a payment and also do the actual payment, all those kind of things. To have a good overview about all like technical accounts, robot accounts, knowing what are those kind of things. And those are the kind of things you essentially have to have provable in control, also visible, to be able to comply with the directive, as well as, of course, to improve your overall cybersecurity. Yeah, so that's really where we focus on, to give you that information in hand, to put also the security or the identity and access management team back in the driver's seat. Even though if you, let's say, you use an Identum today, we'll go step by step how this will enhance, but this will enhance your capabilities to kind of govern your environment, to have a good understanding where things are going and how to go about things. So like I said, there are kind of two ways to go about this, or two kind of approaches, depending a bit where you stand as an organization today. Let's say you don't have anything from the identity and access management part yet, and you want to start and say, okay, security for us is really a priority. That's a kind of roadmap of maturity model we together developed with our friends from Identum to work towards, to say, okay, let's start with identifying our access risk today. I'm gonna explain you how we're gonna do it and how that's gonna look like. But let's really start risk-based, get the data, get the understanding where those people have access from, where are the risks, in order to review that, in order to see where things are already going wrong today, and of course getting notified if there are new things happening. So really clean up and monitoring phase. When you're at that stage, you already have made a fundamental jump towards security, and you can already say, okay, now we already having control about users and their accesses. But the journey, of course, doesn't stop there. Then you want to go a step further to really design role model, design policies, and all those kind of things, basically to prepare, basically to get ready to all the stuff Alf just was explaining to you, to get the joiner, mover, lever. But basically, you have already clean data sets that will also enhance and also will make it way more easy to do a project with such a solution, because it's going to be a smoother journey at the end of the day. And when you're there, then we go all over to increased operational efficiency, automated provisioning, the improved decision making, all those kind of things. And then when you have those kind of tools playing together in a nice orchestra, you are able to improve data quality here and there. You can treat those kind of things, and you have an end-to-end control of your security journey. Hence, what we also saw, there are also plenty of, I think, nowadays Identum customers, and they say, okay, that's interesting, but we started the other way around. How would that look like? Well, that's something we were also anticipating on it. Let's imagine, indeed, you are already a really happy customer of Identum. You have the operational control in hand, but now you want to go the next steps to set up the governance, to get into control, and to maybe see, okay, we automate certain things, we have a joiner, mover, lever in place, but what happens to all our historic stuff, that the role that happened before, where we looking at data maybe not the right way? Is there things that is there still some cleanup needed, or is the way we have it today, is it perfect? And also, again, the role mining, all those kind of things. And then indeed really getting into a governance model to understand and also to govern your tool, to say, okay, can we also be sure that if something is offboarded, the offboarding really happened, or sometimes we see that you also want to have control on that, and then you really have the nice audit proof you're able to show towards the auditor that you're really in control of who has access to what within the organization. All right, so there are plenty of use cases that we have, and that's one I'd like to share with you. That's one of our customers. It's a bit of anonymous in that way, as we're not sharing the logo or the details. But the case we had here, a Swedish bank active in the Nordics, around 400 employees. So you also see not the biggest customer, but we can also work as well as 2,000 employees, international pharmaceutical company. And there they started exactly with the challenge. There were no control about user and access, complex landscape, multiple different systems, directories, SharePoints, all those kind of things, and a small team essentially. So to really give them the tool in hands to, with that limited team or that small team, to have the right access to the right users at the right time, we help them with over there. So how do we do those kind of things? The idea really is to get a data-driven approach, or a data-driven view about who can access. So essentially, going to collect all the identity relevant data, connecting to all the different data sources, getting the data and making the data understandable, for the identity and access management experts, for the security team, in order to see are the things there, but also in order to review them, to see who has access to what. But we're not only making it understandable for you as the IT experts, we also make it understandable for broader scope, hence team leaders, application, all those kind of things, that you are also able to collect the feedback from the business. And hence, once you're getting the feedback, you're able to act on that or monitor what is happening. So the kind of cycle there is closed. So how does that look in practice from a more architecture point of view? So on the left-hand side, imagine that's your IT application landscape. We see some Active Directory, we see some HR systems, cloud tools, SaaS tools, on-premise databases, custom tools. You might are already a customer of Identum or not. But basically the idea is to connect to all those different applications, pull the data in our system, have the data over there correlated to really have a good understanding on the risks that are there. So to really get the understanding on the top risks that are there, to be able to clean those up, right? As already said, we are in that sense an analytics platform or a data platform. Hence, we won't do any changes towards the underlying sources. So there are two ways to go about this. Either you can trigger a change in Elimity and say, we found Peter went on pension leave last month, and we see there are still 3 accounts open. Those have to be revoked. Well, what can we do? Either we trigger then Identum, and if an Identum is in place, like Alf explained to you, Identum will do his magic and revoke the access of that person. Or when you're not there yet, or you want to do first maybe a manual step in between to understand it, you're also able to send the ticket towards the ticket system, and the right admin who is working with the ticket system anyway will get the ticket in order to revoke the access. The nice part of it, you always collect the audit proof already in Elimity itself, as the change request will be triggered there and also monitored there. Then the part 4, monitoring, alerting, and dashboarding, extremely important, right? You want to have, as a CISO, you want to have a security responsible, a really good overview about the core KPIs. We want to track orphaned accounts, privileged accounts, all those kind of things, that you are nicely in control of that. But also you want to be notified if certain things happen in your environment. One of my favorite examples is, imagine there is a process in place that whenever there is a new admin or a new Active Directory admin, let's take that example, is created in the organization, that this needs to be approved by you as the CISO. Hence, you want to get the notification whenever there is a new admin created. Either, indeed it's Tom, and I approved Tom's account last week, or you say, but that's for Peter, and I never approved anything for Peter, so where is that coming from? And so you see, you get way more a grasp on your environment, you're back in the driver's seat, and that way you're able to control what's going on there. And those alerts you can send to whatever system you like. Yeah, so here is Microsoft Teams, as a lot of organizations use, can be Slack, can be an email, can be whatever, so that this is also as convenient as possible. And then last but not least, and that's also an extremely important one, especially when we make the loop back towards our NIS2 story from the beginning, is access reviews. Access reviews, recertification campaigns, you name it. It's really about getting the feedback from the different business owners, like team leaders, like application owners, like managers, to ask them on a regular basis, are those people that still have access to those resources the right one? Because from IT, from security, of course, there are certain rules we can apply and certain things that we can check up on, but that those only going to be pretty hard rules. But when it comes down to content, when it comes down to the right access of the right people, you will always want to have the feedback from the different business stakeholders that are around there. And there we also tend to have a really nice and flexible solution to start with as easy questions as are in the HR system. We see those 5 people are in your team. Is that still correct? Because we all know that HR are usually in most organizations the most responsive one to include IT, or especially IT security, in those kind of processes. So you will also improve your data over there. And then indeed, are those the right access? And what I also like is you can go really complex there with access matrices that we also see, like Offset, the most used identity and access management tool out there, probably going to be Microsoft Excel. Also there for access reviews, we see a lot of Excel used. We have grids there. We can make those grids with 2 mouse clicks within Elimity, but also really easy questions to kind of train the organization, to take them along a journey. So also from a change process, have it less intrusive, ask people more questions like, we see that your people haven't logged in Salesforce for the last year. And also be mindful that Salesforce is an expensive tool. We pay quite heavy licenses for that. So please let us know if it's not needed. So improve on budget, but also, of course, the necessary improve on security. And last but not least, you have the compliance part covered. All right, that was it from a content point of view. Giel, I will hand over back to you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a very good explanation on the different approaches, how to automate your identity and access management processes on the one hand, And on the other hand, how to show to the auditors that you're in control of users, accesses, and all your identity risks. Maybe important to mention, we shared a guide in the comments. If you download the guide, you have the 8 most crucial identity security controls that we see that our customers at Elimity are implementing to achieve NIS2 compliance. So those are the 8 starting points actually within your organization if you would like to take some action. On the other hand, we didn't show the solutions. We wanted to give you as much value as possible and share you as much best practices as possible. So we didn't talk too much about the solutions itself, and we didn't show or demo the solution. So that's something we can do also in a later phase if you would like to see the solution in action. As mentioned, it's the end of the session, so we were right within time. We have still quite some minutes, which is a good thing because there is a Q&A, and we already received some questions. So if you go into the platform, if you have a question, you have to go into the platform and you can launch your questions in there. We did receive already a few questions. The first is, I think it is for team Identum. So Alf Aukan, thanks again for your presentation, but there is another question. So the question is as follows. Based on my own experience, EIM systems and their implementations tend to drag out. If we haven't yet decided on a platform and a strategy, what would you recommend as an expert?
Wow, that's almost like a prepared question. I'm of course very biased, I would say, by EIM from Identum, but I mean, it could be a good idea to start with your guide, actually, the 8 checkpoints, or our guide, and see where are we missing out, what are our main challenges, and start from there. But I wouldn't, if you have 0 systems in place now, I would not recommend a huge enterprise rollout of a complex identity and access management system with the governance module. Then I would definitely go for something more lightweight. And if you take the first step and you get on the IAM bandwagon, you can always upgrade later if the needs are there in the organization. So start small. Even giants did.
Very clear. The lean and mean. That's something we preach at Elimity as well. So cool answer. Christian, the next question is for you, I think. Isn't Elimity just a one-off? That's a question we've heard before.
Yes, that's a question we heard before, but actually that's the nice part about NIS2. It's not a one-off, as it's especially you have to be continuous in control, right? We talked about the cleanup part, and indeed that might be a huge exercise you hopefully only do once, especially when you combine Elimity with Identum, where you maybe make once the cleanup exercise, do some role mining, set down a good data structure, and then you're supplementing that with the proper join and move a lever process, so you make sure that the things that you're kind of want to have there, they stay there, and the processes stay in place. That's of course something you don't want to do on a yearly or daily or monthly basis, because it's we all know cleaning up, it's not the most exciting job. However, you want to have the continuous control, and you need to prove that you're in control on a continuous level. So in that sense, you need it on a continuous level as well, in order to prove that you have the necessary control, in order to do Excel reviews, all those kind of things. That's a really easy one. It's a clear no.
A clear no. Okay, noted. Duly noted. Thank you, Christian. Then another question, and a question I can relate to. The SharePoint. If you don't have any visibility in who can access your SharePoint folders, is that something you can see with the solution as well, Christian? Elimity?
Yeah, I think indeed that's a visibility question, 100%. So that's also the difference between a classic identity and access management tool and the governance part or the analytics part we are really focusing on. It's the part on that we take the data as is, right? So we don't need to transform the data. We don't need to check the data. That really gives the broad visibility. So unstructured data like a SharePoint or Windows file shares, for us is can be connected as any other data connector and indeed. So we have actually customers that might be an interesting one to share. It goes a bit beyond the scope of the NIS2, but AI is all out there. Copilot is pushed by Microsoft a lot, and what we have actually customers that come to us especially for SharePoint. Because what does Copilot doing? Copilot looks at your access rights in SharePoint and your access rights in Entra or Active Directory, and based on that answers your questions about your organization. So there are organizations out there, they kind of had to roll it back, as you could ask, and that's maybe a more funny example, but could not be funny. It's so funny in different organizations. It's, what is my boss earning? And then they had a group in SharePoint, and suddenly somehow everyone had access to the pay slips that were somewhere saved in SharePoint. And if they belong there, that's a different story. But if they are there and suddenly everyone in the organization has to some nested groups or some nesting access to it, and might not be that some person would have clicked through all those different possibilities, because you all know those shares and are huge. But yeah, this is something where Copilot kind of brings that symptoms up and shows that there are challenges. So that's something we can also help with over there.
Perfect. That's the first thing I'll be doing, asking how much my boss is earning. Thank you for the tip, Christian. Maybe in addition, I also will add a link in our famous Slack channel. There you can see all the applications Elimity is making. All the integrations Elimity is making. So you can have a look at all the applications. It can be SaaS solutions, but also other ones. And then you can see with which solutions we integrate with. Might be interesting to see as well. Maybe a question for both of you. Maybe Alf, we will start with you. Which deployments does Identum support? Is it cloud or on-prem?
We are cloud only and cloud native. We do, however, speak with on-prem systems through a local client when needed and when applicable. So we cover both, but the platform itself is cloud-based, yes.
Okay, perfect. Christian, same question for you.
Yeah, for us, we are agnostic in that sense. So of course we have our SaaS solution, and but we can also do, we call it self-hosted, so the client can choose whether or not they host it in their own Azure, AWS, whatever tenant, or classic on-premise. And I think it's like split it on a 50-50 split with our customers, also depending on the industry, right?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, then maybe one last question. Alf, is your platform secure? Is it hosted? Where is it hosted?
Yes, it is secure, and that can be documented. I don't want to go into details, but we're part of Visma, and stringent security measures has been made. So it's all documented and out there. If you want to go to the Visma Trust Center, for instance, or reach out to us. It's hosted in the country you are in. So if you're a Belgian customer, you will set up your hosting there. And if you're in Norway, we already are in place. So hosted in your country.
Okay, perfect. That's the answer everybody wants to hear, I think. And then there is another question. Is your solution reliant on American technology? And if so, do you have an exit strategy if needed? Maybe Christian, we can start with the Elimity solution.
Yes, so we are not reliant on American technology, let's say. So like I said, we don't rely on any cloud native tools or cloud native functionalities. So you're perfectly able to host it in your own data center. But yeah, of course, to say not at all might be a bit of a blunt answer, because technology is so vastly connected and all those kind of things. And I think that also still most organizations rely on the Microsoft stack for emails and those kind of things, or for on Google for the Office applications. So if our American friends will kind of how we say get the plug out of energy plug, pull the plug. That was I was looking for. On that kind of sense, I think we all will have an issue, but our technology itself, there are no backdoors to the US. There is no underlying technology that is needed from that kind of point of view.
Okay.
I hope that, Christopher, answers your questions and gives you some comfort.
Yeah.
The same answer from us, and it can be hosted on whatever provider you can think of. But of course, the American giants are still here, and we are all quite reliant on them. And part of finding solutions to that problem is looking towards the European suppliers. And there are a few hosters in Europe, even though we don't maybe have the super scalers that the US represents. Comes down to cost, basically.
Beautiful way to end the webinar. I think if there are some more questions, we will definitely be in contact via email afterwards. But thanks for the audience for the questions. Thanks for your interest. We can see there was quite some people joining, even though it's pretty early and very sunny. So it's cool that you preferred Illimity's and Identum session over a nice walk in the park. So thanks for that. As mentioned, in the next couple of hours, you will automatically receive the recording, and also we will be sharing the slides upon request. But thank you so much, and enjoy the sun in some places, except in Stavanger, where it's super rainy. So thank you so much. Thank you, Elf. Thank you, Christian, and talk to you very soon.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you guys.